Welcome back to another episode of We Don't Know What to Watch, the podcast where two guys watch random movies and talk about them. And with me, as always, is the Fleetwood to my Mac, Kyle Mulford. And I'm Noah Saturn. How you doing, Kyle?
I'm doing okay. Other than a band member of Fleetwood Mac has just recently passed away.
Rest in peace.
Today's episode is brought to you by hot dogs. Because just like hot dogs, if you listen to one podcast at a time, it's okay. But if you try and ingest them all at once, you may almost die.
Exactly. It's also brought to you by the Catholic Church. Catholicism. We make you feel guilty.
So what did we watch?
We watched the 1996 film Sleepers. I had never heard of this film before. Did you?
Yes, I actually saw this when it came out in 96.
Yeah.
I don't think I saw it in the theater. I think I rented it.
Definitely a very solid cast.
I don't really know the kid actors that much. One of them is Brad Renfro. I've heard the name. I don't really know what he's been in. But then you get the adult cast. You got Kevin Bacon and I'm just drawing a blank on his name.
Jeffrey Donovan.
Taxi driver. Robert De Niro. Wow. Drew a blank on Bobby D's the name.
He'd be disappointed in you, and I'm disappointed in you.
And Brad Pitt and Minnie Driver, and this is Billy Crudup's first feature film.
And Dustin Hoffman.
Yeah.
A surprise Wendell Pierce.
Where was he at?
He was Little Caesar.
Oh, okay. That's right. Yeah, so really good cast. Anyway, do you want to give the snowball pitch?
Okay, so in the 60s, in Hell's Kitchen, there's a group of boys hanging around doing the things that boys do in the 60s. And then after a prank gone wrong, they get sent to juvie, and then juvie is not very well regulated, so they're treated terribly, and they're molested and assaulted in multiple ways while they're there. And then 13 years later, two of the boys who've now become gangsters happen to see one of the guards just like at a restaurant, and then the revenge scheme starts from there.
Dun dun dun. So this movie's kind of split up into three. You've got the kids pre-prank, you've got the kids in juvie, and then you've got the adults when they become adults. So it's that's kind of like the three acts of this movie. And so this is one of those narrated movies. So Shakes is the main kid of the four, played by Jason Patric as the older Shakes, but he's narrating his life in 1966 in Hell's Kitchen. And like you said, they're doing what boys do, and they're also part of the Catholic Church, but they have like influence from both sides because it is Hell's Kitchen. So, there's gangsters about and mobsters and all that. You've got King Benny, who's kind of like the main mobster in the neighborhood. And then you got Father Bobby. Was it Father Bobby?
Yes, Father Bobby Carolla.
Yes, Bobby, brother to Adam Carolla. No. He drives a Toyota Corolla. Father Bobby, who's played by Robert De Niro, is actually just a really, this is a honest, good person role for Robert De Niro. Like, he's a good priest and a good friend to the kids and tries to lead them on the right path. So it doesn't actually, sometimes they can shed light on bad stuff in Catholic Church and movies. They like to do that. But this one, it was like, no, this was just a good father who was trying to steer these kids away from. He didn't like King Benny. He didn't like them running money for him because the boys got into running, what was it, protection money and all that stuff for King Benny. So Robert De Niro was a good priest in this one.
Yeah, he's like the one morally fully upright character other than Carol, played by Minnie Driver.
Yeah, and she was just kind of a friend of the four boys, and she kind of came and went in this movie. But because when they were kids, she wasn't around a lot for any of the scenes other than just a couple of them that she was kind of a side character. But then you learn when they're older that she stayed friends with them, and they go to her for help later. But yeah, they just get into shenanigans. And actually, the main kid, Shakes, is actually a really I like this character because he's actually a good kid. He wants to be good. He gets kind of caught up with the King Benny stuff, but overall, he's he's a troublemaker, but he tries to. He's got a good head on his shoulders, but he has to deal with being part of the mobsters in Hell's Kitchen, and then his dad is always screaming at his mom and throwing shit around, and not a great home life.
Friends with a blind kid named Matt. Oh wait, no, that's just Daredevil.
Oh, I was like, wait a minute, Matt Murdock.
Exactly.
Yeah,
come on, you could see him in that setting.
Yeah, I mean, he was in Hell's Kitchen, so.
And then if he comes back in 1981, it'd be like the Frank Miller era of Daredevil. It makes perfect sense.
Right? I like it. Let's rewrite this story.
Sounds good.
But anyway, it all leads to, it's for the first like half hour, 45 minutes, it's just the kids and kind of watching them and how they act in there, because it goes from summer of 66 to then it goes to like the winter of 67, and just kind of, just chilling, whatever. It goes back to summer again in 67, and they're like, hey, it's hot. What do we want to do today? Oh, there's a hot dog vendor. Let's go, mess with him and try and steal a hot dog. Well, then he gives chase to Shakes, and then the other three actually steal the entire cart. And then they're just going to play a joke on him and hold it over subway stairs, going down to a subway. And they're like, oh, we'll let go of it when he comes around the corner. We're going to tease him with it. And then they're like, oh, crap, I can't hold on. And it drops and goes down the stairs and puts a guy in a hospital. So that's how they end up. So yes, it was a stupid prank and it was horrifying, but it was still boys playing a prank. But it's bad enough because they almost killed someone. So they go to this, is it like just it's kind of it was like a Wilkinson's,
it's a juvenile detention center. Yeah.
Yeah. Wilkinson's home for the boys or something like that. So I don't remember exactly what it was called.
Yeah. Something like that.
But yeah, like you said, it's then you got Kevin Bacon and three other guards there that like to take advantage of young boys.
Yep. Typical abuse of power. They beat them, then they do worse things. Like I said, there's sexual assault. And yeah, that's definitely pretty hard to watch.
I will say that I actually liked the way this was filmed, because you get the tension of it and you know what's going on, but you don't see a lot because they take them down into a basement, this long hallway, lead them down a long hallway, and then they go into these gated cages where, storage area cages. And they kind of film through there so you can just kind of see their heads, and they don't show anything graphically, which I appreciated.
Yeah, it never got graphically explicit, but you could still understand what was going on.
Yeah, so this movie was shot really well. That was one thing I want to bring up, because there's even scenes like their last night where all four of them were still in the boys' home. The guards went after them extra hard and extra abusive. And there was a part where they took them down in the hallway again, and this was the last night that they were getting abused, and it was just this heartbreaking like shot where it was just the hallway, and they're down the hallway. You don't see them, but there's just a light down in the hallway, and then the camera just zooms back slowly, and the hallway gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And just, I liked the shot choices in this movie.
Yeah, very good. And this was directed by Barry Levinson.
Yes, who did things like Rain Man and Good Morning Vietnam and a lot of other movies, but those were two of his better movies on his oeuvre. But I liked all of the kid stuff in this movie, so the first 2/3 of it. And I did like the last half, but let's get into that, where they're done with the boys' home. So then we cut to 1981, and you've got two of the characters. It was John and Mikey, played by Ron Eldard and Billy Crudup. And they're like these gangster type now that murder people on a whim. They're killers for gangsters and whatever, and just all around mean guys. They walk into a bar and they kind of, people are like afraid of them. And they go into the back room, and one of them goes back to the restroom, and he sees Kevin Bacon, now older and just sitting alone eating a meal. And he goes to get that was Mikey, Billy Crudup. He goes back to get John and says, hey, look who we got back here. And he's like, oh. So they both walk back there and just point blank. They talk to Kevin Bacon, and he has no remorse about what he did. So they just point blank shoot him in the chest. And I think they shot him like once in the head at the very end.
Yep. So they shoot him in like the legs, shoot him in the chest and make sure he's in tons of pain, and then shoot him in the head. And then they just walk away.
Yeah. And so then the whole last third of the movie is about them being in court. Well, those two went down that path. And then Mikey, now played by Brad Pitt, went down the path of becoming a lawyer. But the last, 10, 15 years since that happened to them as kids, he's been trying, like he became a lawyer and started gathering information on the four guards that did that to them. And he's been gathering lots and lots of information to try and get back at them his own way. So then we get into this whole plan of he contacts Shakes, who is now working for a newspaper, and says, hey, I'm going to be the lawyer against our friends.
Yeah, he ends up working as a prosecutor for the district attorney's office.
And then the whole plan is he's going to act like he's a turncoat so that John and the other one,
Tommy.
John and Mikey,
John and Tommy
think that he's turned on them so that they don't know that there's a whole plan going on. And he has King Benny hire Dustin Hoffman because he's like this incompetent drunk lawyer, and he's like, okay, we're going to feed you the lines, and this is what you're going to say during the court session so that I can lose on purpose. So
yep, and it's very much about, and one thing that comes up and over again is that there's the Count of Monte Cristo comes up, because I know initially Mikey reads it as part of like the prison school system at the juvenile center. And then because the Count of Monte Cristo is of a guy who's put into prison wrongfully, and then he waits years and years and years to finally get his revenge.
Yes. So yeah, that is, and I think that's one of the names. Like they have this whole system because being a newspaper guy and the lawyer, they can't be seen together. Mikey and Shakes. So they have this system of, in the newspaper, I'll drop it on your doorstep, and it's going to say Edmund on the classified section or whatever, and that means I want to meet you. So yeah, they get this whole plan going, and then in the meantime, Mikey also has information on some of the other guards, and he gives information to someone in the police force because one of the guards became a policeman who takes bribes and killed a drug lord, and so he got him put in prison for that. And then another one was interesting because it was in the boys' home. They had this football game that the guards play against the boys, and they decided, you know what, we're going to stick it to the guards. And so they go to this other kid named Rizzo, who didn't get as much crap from the guards, but wanted to, but didn't like what was going on or whatever. And so they beat the guards in football, but then the guards beat them with their clubs, and Rizzo ended up dying. No. They were playing a game of touch football. That was the most violent game of touch football I've ever seen in my life. Hardcore touch football. Touch them with a fist. But then, so what happens later is the one who killed Rizzo is still molesting boys 15 years later, and King Benny.
Yeah, he's the dirty cop, and then turns out he's got some gambling debts.
Yeah, and King Benny takes on the debts, but then he gives the debts to Rizzo's older brother, who also, runs a gang. And he says, oh, by the way, I've given this debt over to this guy, so you need to get the money from him. And also, by the way, he's the one who killed your brother. So that doesn't end well for that guy either.
Yep, so so first there's the one guard, Kevin Bacon. He's killed by the two boys. Another guard is killed by the gangster played by Wendell Pierce. His name is Little Caesar, Rizzo's older brother. And then gangster number 3, the corrupt cop, is taken down by Internal Affairs. And finally, I thought the most interesting one was when they had guard number 3. Guard number 4, Ralph Ferguson, who was retired and just teaches Sunday school. They had him come on as a witness.
A character witness for Sean Noakes, who was the one who died, Kevin Bacon.
So then when he's on the stand, they have Dustin Hoffman as, the lawyer. Basically, he was fed all this information, so he gets him to admit of all the terrible things they did at Wilkinson.
Yeah, because he's like, well, can you tell me he's a good man? He's like, well, he was a good friend, and kept hounding him about, was he a good man? Was he a good man? Or did you do these things? And they finally admitted to it and broke down and admitted. But the thing is even with that though, the whole trial hinged on our good Father Bobby.
Yep, so this ends up becoming, very much the second half. A big plot part of it is a courtroom thriller. It kind of felt very John Grisham-y.
Yeah.
So in this case, so originally, the whole thing was like, okay, they had witnesses to place them at the scene. How do we get them down? So they get help from King Benny, who pays some of the witnesses off. And other ones they were able to sort of discredit on the stand, implying that this woman was like drunk when she would have seen them.
Yeah,
and
but
lastly, they needed someone to get them out of that situation, give them an alibi.
Yeah, because no matter how much they disproved the other witnesses, they needed someone who witnessed them outside of the bar at that time. So they had to ask Father Bobby to get on the stand and lie for them. And that's the thing, is that he's such a good man that like he's conflicted about going and doing this, but then Shakes tells him the whole story of what happened in there. And finally, it took him a good while. And he finally came in at the last minute and said, nope, they were at the basketball game. I did love this scene, though, is he asked him, oh, you were at a basketball game? He's like, yeah. How'd you pay for it? I paid cash. So you paid cash and it was just those two with you, nobody else. So nobody knows that you actually went and bought these tickets. You don't have anything, blah, 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 blah. And he goes, nope, I don't have any of this stuff, but it's a good thing that I always save my ticket stubs because you never know. And he pulls out 3 ticket stubs and they're like, woo, we won the case.
Yep, so then, Mikey threw the case, so then they have kind of one last hurrah, and then you find out what happens to him later.
Yeah. Doesn't end too well for a couple of them all anyway, but they got their revenge before, so I don't know about the third act of this movie. It was still good, and I liked it, but like I feel like there was such a camaraderie between the 4 characters as kids, and even in the Home for Boys where they stuck with each other. And then in the third act, it was almost like they grew up, and now it's just like, oh, now let's just get our revenge. Like we don't really talk to each other anymore, but let's get together and get our revenge. And there was like no other character traits other than the revenge. And like it was almost like they don't even see each other anymore. But I suppose it is this one thing brought them back together.
Yeah, and I think that does make sense because like people do drift apart over time.
Yeah, and also they probably handled it in different ways. Like the 2 went on to become just all out bad kids and bad adults, and one became a lawyer hell bent on revenge because he's gathering all the information to try and take the long revenge. And then you got one who just kind of still was a good guy. Shakes was just kind of stayed pretty moral and just worked for a newspaper and lived his life. And then it seems like, afterwards he went and lived his life. And this movie was based, this is interesting because it was based on a book by Lorenzo Carcaterra. And he said he may have falsified some of the details in the book, but he said everything else was true. They just changed like the names and dates and whatever, to protect anybody. But apparently, like, all of the boys' homes there looked through records are like, we don't have any indication of this. We don't have any, like lawyers looked into it. There's no any indication that any case like this ever happened in this area and around this time that he says it happened. And apparently, like I was reading that even people from his childhood came out of the woodworks to say, nope, none of this really happened to him. But that's where you get the little title card at the end that said, there's no evidence that any of this happened, but this guy stands by his story. So it's an interesting case of supposedly based on true events, but like nobody believes them. So,
well, or maybe it's based on a true story the same way that Fargo is based on a true story.
Right. Although apparently this author stands by his claim that this is an absolute true story.
Well, maybe he's just committing to the bit.
Yeah, I don't know. It's weird. So this another interesting thing I found was I was reading, and apparently Roger Ebert went on some rant about how this movie was homophobic because but then the gay community came out and said, no, we like this movie because he said that the whole moral thing of the church coming to help and, Father Bobby coming to help, would he have helped if they were just beaten there? No, it's because men were raping boys. I'm going, no, it's because men were raping kids. Like, if it was men raping little girls too, that's not gay. That'd
still be terrible.
It's pedophilia. And it's like, and it's awful. It's kids being molested. It has nothing to do with gay or straight. I'm going, what are you talking about, Roger Ebert? It's kids getting molested. It's horrible. And I would hope that the church would step in, and I would hope that a priest would even lie to get that. Although I don't know. I mean, these people are awful and they kill people all the time anyway. The John and Tommy characters, it's like, but we want to get them off on this murder because they murdered a really bad man.
That's true. So, it is questionable with some of the motivations. But ultimately, I thought it was a solid movie, very well put together. I thought it had good tone and good pacing. Yeah,
and like I said, good shot choices, good cinematography in this, and score by John Williams.
Yeah, that was also a pleasant surprise.
Which I saw his name come up. I'm like, I didn't know. There was nothing real memorable about this score, but it worked because it's John Williams, and it was actually up for Academy Award. That was the one Academy Award this movie was up for, was Best Original Score. It lost to The English Patient, which also won Best Picture that year.
Well, you can't win them all.
Nope. You can just win a lot of them. He has won a lot, right? He's not one of those that's...
well, he's won some, but then also he's lost a ton just because he was nominated so many times.
Yeah, that's the thing. Is been nominated a million times, just don't ever win. No, yeah, he's won a couple of them. No, I think that's it's a real solid movie, and I guess we can go to, let's go into Chekhov's checklist. We have Chekhov's good lie, because they indicate that they're going to have Father Bobby lie at the end by when they're kids and they're about to go to the kids' home. Shakes goes up to Father Bobby and he says, I can't talk to my parents while I'm there, no matter what happens to me. And he doesn't know what's actually going to happen to him, but he goes, no matter what happens to me, good or bad, can you tell my parents I'm okay? And Father Bobby says, it's you want me to lie to your parents. And Shakes goes, it's okay if it's a good lie, right? So then that comes around at the end where it's like, you want me to lie on trial, and it's like, well, it's a good lie, right? He doesn't say that again, but that's that was set up there. And then there's, of course, Chekhov's Count of Monte Cristo that you already mentioned before.
I was really hoping someone was going to eat a Monte Cristo sandwich at one point during the movie, and it didn't happen. I was very disappointed.
That'd be awesome. I think all the kids did a great job acting-wise in this. Billy Crudup, straight out the gate, his first movie. I really liked him in this movie. It was almost unrecognizable. At first, I was like, who's that? And I was like, oh, that's Billy Crudup. Okay. He was really good in this. You can see why he got more work after this. But overall, do you recommend this movie?
Yeah, I think so. I definitely think it is a solid revenge thriller / boomer nostalgia movie.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree. I would recommend this movie. I would put this at it's actually it's a seek it out movie because it's got a good cast, it's well directed, good score from John Williams. The story is interesting, and I like the structure of it and everything. And yeah, it's a seek it out movie. You don't have to seek too far because it is streaming on, what are we watching this on? HBO Max, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, so go find it on HBO Max. It's a recommend from both of us. What would you recommend as a double feature?
So I guess there's two different directions to go with this. You could go, three different directions. You could go courtroom. You could go nostalgia, childhood, coming of age, or you could go revenge. So I think I'm going to go with revenge and go with another movie about a character going through extreme lengths for revenge. And I think I'm going to go with The Revenant.
Oh, okay.
Very different movie, but it also is about people doing elaborate things for the sake of revenge.
Like sleeping in a dead bear.
Mm-hmm. Becoming a bear.
I am one with the bear.
Yes.
I'm going to go a different route. This really, with the narration in talking about his childhood in the 60s in New York and crime families and all that. Yes, it's ultimately a revenge film. I'm pairing it with Goodfellas, with Ray Liotta's kind of narration of growing up with these gangsters. But I like the contrast because Ray Liotta is like, I want to be a gangster, whereas Shakes is like, there's influence on both sides, but he's like actually ultimately a good kid, and like bad things happen to him, and then he has to come back. He comes back and kind of tries to get some revenge on these people. But just kind of a different. It's kind of set up the same way with the narration and talking about how he grew up there and ambitions and all that, but the different the paths they can take just from even being in the same kind of neighborhood, but having a different kind of influence, like the Father Bobby influence on Shakes. So
they should have had Joe Pesci return as cousin Vinny.
Yes, indeed.
And he was the lawyer for the two boys.
Why didn't he come in and Ralph Macchio played Tommy.
Exactly. It's all connected.
Yep. So recommend, and I think we can go on to what our next movie is.
Yeah, so what are we going to do next?
We'll go all genres, 70 or better, and spin. Yeah. Ooh, interesting. Okay, I'm not going to read. I'm going to leave out the names in the description of things, so it's harder for you to guess.
Okay.
After returning to the criminal underworld to repay a debt, Blank discovers that a large bounty has been put on his life.
Oh no. I want to say it's John Wick.
Yes, it is John Wick Chapter 2.
Nice. I was right.
These movies are fun. I already know I like these movies, so this will be a fun rewatch.
Yeah, we're getting Chapter 4.
I know, I'm excited. Have you seen these before?
I have seen all three of them, yes.
Okay. This one is on Pluto TV.
Nice. I love Pluto and I love Tubi because they have the most random things.
They really do. If you dig in there on Pluto and Tubi, I watched so many movies on Tubi. It's a wonder I even still subscribe to anything.
Yeah, because you'll find some good stuff.
But you do have to sit through the commercials on those two channels.
That's true.
But for free, like these movies you get, I mean, John Wick 2, you can watch it for free as long as you have an internet service and a TV that has streaming apps.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not bad.
So not a bad deal. So yeah, I guess till next time, you can find us online on Twitter at AwesomeKM.
And I am at Noah_Saturn. It is SATERN.
And we're on Instagram at We Don't Know What to Watch. And you can email us, we don't know what to watch at gmail.com. Like, subscribe, comment below. Tell us what you thought of this movie. If you've seen it. And until next time, when you're coming out of the subway, watch out for hot dog carts.
Mm-hmm. Hot dogs.
Armor hot dogs.
Hot dogs.
Armor hot dogs.
Exactly.